Hello and welcome to In the Light, Growing Your Soul with me, Anna Isabel. And I'm very happy to introduce my guest today, who is Selina Maitreya. Hello, Selina.
Hello, Anna. Thank you for having me here.
You have written this very inspiring book, and it is called Raise Your Frequency, Transform Your Life. And here it is. And I think, the preface is a good place to start with your book, actually, because it states the aim of the book very, very clearly. And I think it is exactly where our conversation should begin, because it says, the book you are about to read contains information to inform you about the truth and purpose of difficulty in your life. It offers practical spiritual exercises that you can use to transform any tragedy, daily irritation, or stress into tools for conscious transformation that will bring you peace. That is a very big promise, isn't it?
It is, and one that the book delivers, and that we can deliver in our own lives with the information and practices that are contained in the book.
So there is a story behind this, because you go on to explain possibly one of the biggest ways in which we can shift our perception of something that is extremely challenging into something more positive with your own life experience. So tell us about that.
Well, I assume that you're referring to my car event.
Yes.
So the first thing that I need to share that's so important is that before the event happened, which I will explain in a sec, I had been, I'm 70 years old, and spirituality came to me when I was 16 years old. That was when my name, Selina Maitreya, was given to me for the first time. And I had really been intrigued by spirituality for many years. In my 30s, jumping further ahead, was when I met my teacher, who I'm still working with 28 years later. And I took the teachings she gave me and started using them to actually live my life by those teachings. And I did that for a good 15 years before the car event happened. And I think that's really important to keep in mind, because Spirit doesn't just throw us into situations we can't handle. They bring to us events that take us further into the journey that we're on. So I had already been working to transform difficulty into peace before the car event happened. And I think that's important. So we're going to talk about 2013, which is where we find me at a point where I had just been a single mom for 15 years. I was a consultant to photographers around the world. Loved my career, had that for 35 years. And I was financially responsible 90% for my kids. And we lived in a very expensive place. And I put my kids through college, which costs a lot of money. So I was working a great deal. Excuse me. I was also a teacher, but very little. And I was really so excited about the time when I could be a full-time teacher. Loved my job, loved my life. So Spirit had said to me, because I started channeling the third time I sat with my teacher, and Spirit and I had a very consistent relationship. So 15 years later, in 2013, it was time to sell my house. My boys were with the women they're now married to. And I was moving to New York City, and I was going to be a teacher full time. I was going to retire from consulting. I was just going to be in New York City, which I loved. I was born there. I'd done lots of lectures there, and that's where I was going to be. So on July, in the mid-July, I was driving to my car to clean my house for the last time. We had moved everything out the night before. And I was sitting at a traffic light I'd been at for many, many years, and it's a very long light, and this gorgeous sun disappeared, and I had a convertible, little Audi convertible. And so while I'm sitting there, I press the button to put the top up, And the light changed and I went through it, and a woman, I'm going this way, a woman was coming this way in her van, 70 miles an hour, and blew through a stoplight, and hit my car. And I was knocked out on impact. I didn't see her coming. I didn't know it was about to happen. One minute I'm happy and I'm just like literally singing with the radio, and the next thing I don't exist. So when she hit the car and I was knocked out on impact, my experience was that the car filled with tremendous light and I thought I was dying. And I remember my last words were thank you, because I have had a wonderful life. I've, like everybody else, perhaps you as well, Anna, I've had many wonderful things happen and I've had a great deal of difficulty, but it was a wonderful life. It has been. And I thought that's what was happening. My next experience was nothing. And there are no words to describe it. And I don't spend a lot of time here because it's very holy and very precious and there are no words. But I didn't exist. There were no sounds. There was no anything. I now know in reflection that I was taken to oneness, because that's it. That's the experience. When I came back into consciousness, Spirit came in through me, and as the car was still spinning, told me that they had created this event, and it is an event, not an accident, because it was created, and that this was their answer to me wanting to be a teacher. And they said that my life, they were going to take me out of my life, but I would come out of the car without a broken bone or a scratch, because anything physical would be a distraction, but that I would have a very unusual life and a difficult life, different than I had thought, is what they actually had said, different than what I had thought. And that my job was to surrender, because they would take care of all of the daily details. And as I surrendered, they told me life would be more easy, but that I would be in a different place for many years. And that they were doing this to reset my frequencies. So I was taken to the hospital, and no broken bones, no cuts. My car was totaled. And 3 days later, I couldn't walk down a hallway. So I was diagnosed with a traumatic brain injury that was very severe. And it took 5 years before I was able to hold a conversation for more than a few moments with ease. Didn't work anymore, couldn't focus at all for more than an hour to two a day for 5 years. And that's when the book was delivered. So I think that's what you were referring to.
It is. And I think it's really, there's so much in this story which is very challenging to people's perceptions of what life ought to be. And chief amongst them, I think, was the statement you made where, well, firstly, in fact, there's just so many things I want to say. And I'm just thinking, what you had there, other people have near-death experiences and they talk about, seeing spirit or seeing family. You had none of that until the very end when you were coming back in. Is that correct?
There was absolutely, I didn't exist, nothing existed. There was a sense of more than peace. That's all I can express. And then Spirit came through, as they always came through, to talk with me. And so, as wonderful, and I know a lot of people find this part very fascinating, and I'm sure to a lot of people it is. To me, what's most important is really the work that came out of what Spirit gave me through the book. I don't really go back and look at this as a gee whiz experience at all. I look at this as another event, another step along the way of my maturation with the work and with being able to respond to difficulty from love. It's fascinating that when the book came through, I was so, and I write this in the origin story of the book, that they told me very early on that they were giving me a book to write it. I've written 2 books. I've been published twice as a consultant in the photography world. So I knew what writing a book was all about. And I thought, oh my gosh, how do I do this? But I I have never said no to Source. And I knew if they wanted this written, they'd find a way. So I recorded for 5 years into my phone because I had no other way of doing it. And then when I was in year 6 and I was able to type in a way that was, I could transcribe this, it took 2 years to transcribe it. So it was a labor of love that I happily did to create a book from the material.
So taking you back, because I think this is the bit a lot of people are going to find difficult to comprehend, is where you are told that this was happening to help you raise your frequency.
Mhm.
And it seems fairly harsh to have to go through this in order to raise your frequency. And yet it's at the heart of this book, which is about the ability to shift perspective so that we can overcome feelings of self-defeat, etc., when we are going through very difficult times. So talk us through what that means to you.
Yeah, so yeah. I'm sorry, you go ahead, my darling.
To be told that, you're going through this really traumatic
But it
incident.
wasn't for me. That's the difference, you see. So I see why for most people who don't have a relationship with the divine, as I do, and it did, who hadn't done the work that I had already had 15 years doing, I can understand why somebody else's perspective from the third dimensional world is, oh my God, I've actually had people say, oh my God, what'd you do wrong? Spirit had to redirect you so much. And and if I had done something wrong, I'd be happy to answer that question, but I didn't. This was Spirit's way of moving me forward. And it wasn't harsh. I also want to share that part of the reason why it wasn't harsh wasn't just because I had such a developed relationship and I'd been living that work, but because the experience in the car, unbelievable beyond words. And I still had access to that for 6 years by just simply closing my eyes anywhere I was. Now, granted, I had a brain injury, so I wasn't going out much. I couldn't tolerate light. I couldn't tolerate the energy of people. So living in New York City, where Spirit directed me to continue to go, and there were reasons for the book for that, which are crazy good, I had access to that paradigm, which is there's something that happens, and I've actually run this by my neurologist. There's something that happens when your brain is so injured. For me, it showed up as access to this paradigm of oneness that I had been going to whenever I meditated. This was beyond that. This was a deeper feeling that I had never had before, and I didn't have to meditate to get there. I just closed my eyes. So if you can imagine having your entire life taken away, I was very type A in those days, even though I was a spiritual student and I meditated a great deal. I was a single mom. I had a career that was really very large. I was writing books. I was lecturing 150 times in 10 years around the world with the material I was doing back then. I was cooking dinner every night for my kids, every night. So I was like nonstop, and then less than stopped, right? Less than nothing. So having this opportunity at any point to close my eyes and go to a paradigm of oneness where I was nothing, which is so, we can't even begin to imagine what it feels like to have no brain, no stimulus. It's like if anyone on the call listening goes to any of the tanks where you go into the egg and it's a sensory deprivation, times that by 100. That's what I had access to. So when people thought I was closing my eyes because I was weary, I was closing my eyes because I was in a place of amazing nothingness. And it was like a drug. It was wonderful. And it didn't hurt me, it helped me. So Spirit gave me that as well. And many, many other miracles showed up. Amazing things showed up. And so it wasn't at all difficult for me. I never once thought it was a punishment or I had done something wrong or it was harsh. That was never my experience.
No, and that's wonderful. And I think the people equate challenging experiences with, it being punishment, and I know obviously it is not that at all. However, I think what is also interesting is the fact that your brain changed,
Mm.
and that's why you went through this. It's like your brain had to change um, to enable you to do what you're doing, and that is because it's not random. Then
Right.
when,
It wasn't, yes.
when we get to that fact, and that's why I wanted to bring that out in the conversation, because I wanted people to see that there is a reason for this. It's a very specific reason. It was your brain that needed to change.
But let me just share something with you. The brain, it's not. I don't know that my brain needed to change. I think what needed to change, Spirit wanted to change my frequencies. Now, what I understand from my neurologist and from reading in science is that the brain does not create anew. What the brain does is it recognizes the frequencies that are in our body, which change second by second. If Spirit has said to me, Anna, that if we could see, if they could show us how often we're moving from low frequency to high frequency, in an hour, we'd be amazed. So the brain recognizes the frequency that's there and then creates structure around that frequency. Now, the structure the brain creates are the thoughts and the emotions, which I term thoughts moving through our body. So when we're in low frequency, we've got worries, we've got fears. When we're in high frequency, the energy of the divine within us, that high frequency energy that we all have, which is the energy of oneness, which is the only energy, the only component that we all share as human beings. We're all different in other places, but when we're in high frequency, then we're open and we're creative, and the brain is going to create around that. So it's my understanding from what Spirit shared with me that what they did was they changed the whole trajectory of my life so that they could come in, take me out of all the doing that I was in the midst of, place me in a place of incredible receivership so that they could download to me clearly the material of the book, which was the first time I ever got to see all of the work I had done for 15 years in any kind of third dimensional form. So I could look at it and go, oh my God, look at that. I know that. I know. It was crazy. But also so that I could be in a place as a human being where I was ready to teach, because we can't teach. My teacher and I talk about this all the time. Teachers, when they're authentic and they're honest, they're teachers who teach what they already know and still need to know. So as teachers, we're always just a few steps ahead of our students in terms of how we're living the information that we're teaching. And some of us a few more steps. But that's what it was. It was giving me this opportunity to be even more of the work, living in the next several years. Everything, it was like a crash course in everything I'd been living for 15 years that came through in some remarkable pieces of difficulty. Now I was getting the graduate course, right? In how do I respond to losing all my money, not knowing if I'd ever be well again, because with the brain injury, they don't know. They tell you that where you are in a year is where you're going to be. And in a year, I had nothing. I had nothing. And I told my neurologist, you're going to have to change these timelines because it's not going to be me. And I couldn't, lived in New York City, couldn't go to movies, couldn't go to plays, couldn't go to restaurants without great difficulty. And so I did things, but with a lot of difficulty because I lived beyond my circumstances. That's part of this work, is living beyond, but that was done with great difficulty. So yeah, so it was the graduate course in everything I had been living up to now. in
Mm.
order for me to be prepared to be the teacher to do what I'm doing. I mean, I went from 0 to 100 when this book came out, doing podcast interviews. And then they gave me a mission in April that has me all over the country now, reaching out to spiritual leaders and holding weekend events around the book to help as many people as I can to transform difficulty into love. So the book is just one part of this big mission they gave me that had me out there. I wouldn't have been able to have any of this or nowhere to start. So it's not just about me, it's about me as a teacher who's able now to bring this work authentically to the world.
Oh, it's never about us. It's always about
The work.
the work.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So you were talking about love there, and obviously it's just a huge, huge part of all of this. And in, I think, your second chapter, possibly, you talk about reactivating the frequency of love. Tell us what that means.
Well, the way I can answer that is to share with you. We all perceive ourselves and refer to ourselves as me or I. That's what we're conditioned to say, to believe, to think. And that takes us down to being one-dimensional beings, which we're not. We are, in fact, we are multidimensional beings. I call this a life stream, and that phrase came from Gangaji, the beautiful teacher, whose work I really have just read in my early days quite a bit. And this life stream of Selina, just like the life stream of Anna and everyone else who is listening, contains a physical body, one manifestation. I have a physical brain, which we've been talking about, 2 manifestations. I also have a personality. I have a history in this body, 4 manifestations now. I have a thinking mind. I have an emotional body. All of these different moving parts that, whether we know it or not, are running our life every day. But we also are energy. We contain energy. So we have EKGs, EEGs. We have energy runs the brain. The brain picks up the energy. That's what it creates structure around. And we have energy in the heart, obviously. So we have high frequency energy and we have low frequency. The low frequency is the egoic. It is the energy from the pain experience we've had that lives within us. And we are conditioned, all of us, from the time we're born, to respond to pain with more of the same. Somebody cuts you off on the road, very few people will have an initial response to say, oh, drive safely, be well. They're cursing, they're angry, they're startled, they're in fear, right? So that's the low frequency, but we also have the high frequency. Now, all of those manifestations of us, with the exception of the high frequency of love, our soul body, also called the intuitive body, all of those other parts of us as life streams are different. We have different personalities, different brains, different experiences, but we all share the energy of love. But we are conditioned to not even know that we have that there. Sure, we love people, we fall in love, we send little hearts to everybody, we emoji like crazy, but we don't understand that that energy of love is an active field within us that is a whole tool bag that we're not recognizing or using. And so what I teach people in the book early on that Spirit has given us is that difficulty, and I love this, one of the most important teachings in the book, is that difficulty was never meant to be responded to with low frequency, with more of the same, which is what we're conditioned to do. Difficulty was always meant to be our journey back to love. And that when difficulty arises, we're to activate the high frequency within us as our response to that, to be of patience, to be of compassion. Somebody closes the door in front of us as we go in a building because they're not thinking, they don't see us, and most people will go, oh, really? Well, thank you so much for that. And that's a low frequency, snarky little response, right? I was there many times years ago, very much so, but now the response is, oh, maybe they didn't see me. Have a wonderful day. No worries. And I go through the door. So we have the opportunity to respond from kindness and compassion, from gratitude and grace, That's our opportunity. And when we respond from those frequencies, we're enacting them. We're actually engaging them, and we become that energy in the moment. So if we can follow that for a bit, and if we could look at all the difficulties that arise in one day, from the people cutting us off on the road to perhaps our teenagers being a little snarky to us, or just coming when they need money, or coming when they want something, or we find ourselves in a grocery store and having to get out quickly, and somebody's at the 8 items or less line and they're taking their time, and we're just getting angry and angrier. If all of these little moments that we choose to respond to with difficulty, we could respond to from love, oh my gosh, we would be in that energy consistently. And each time we bring that energy in, we increase our core frequency.
And I would add that we need to include that compassion towards ourselves, because when we are overreacting to something, and it is a clear indication that we are feeling overwhelmed at some level, and rather than either justifying the negative behavior or the anger or the irritation, which may well be fairly understandable because people can be extremely provocative, it doesn't really matter that bit. What matters is that the response is communicating something about how we're feeling in that moment. You know, the feeling of vulnerability, that means that we are feeling threatened and we behave defensively, or the feeling of frustration because we are overwrought or overwhelmed by everything that's expected of us, feeling under pressure. Those moments when we come at something with impatience and perhaps forgetting compassion for somebody else are also moments when we need to direct that compassion to ourselves.
Could not agree more. Could not agree more. And I think that that's what oneness is. The field of oneness that I talked about, that we can go to and inhabit, is that high frequency within us. And it is a very real energy field. It is a field that is inside and surrounds us. And so every action that we take goes into the field of oneness. So the work that we do to respond to difficulty from love is not just for ourselves, it is for the field of oneness, because that's where we all reside. But we are a part of the field of oneness. And we also, I think your point is so well taken, because we have, this is the beauty of the work, is that not only, it's all about self-responsibility. And part of self-responsibility is placing yourself in receivership. There's a whole chapter at the end of the book about the importance of placing ourselves in divine receivership. And divine receivership is a very large topic, and part of it is the words we use to describe ourselves, the words we use to talk to about ourselves, how we are, as you just shared, being notified when we're unkind to another, that there's something within us that's out of alignment. One of the first practices in the book, because the book contains not just truths, but it's a workbook. It's been designed as a workbook for anybody to be able to use, because it has practices in it that go along with each teaching. And as you take on these practices, you see for yourself, you feel the energy shifts, you start to see yourself change in situations and the energy that you're bringing to you. So one of the first practices, Anna, is being invited to go to speak to the divine within and to say, what am I to learn here? Because every piece of difficulty has purpose. So we don't want to just go and look at it and notice it and get rid of it. No. We don't want to use it as a landing pad and jump into it and, oh my God, you're not going to believe what happened to me. And there's a whole teaching around that. We want to have the difficult moment. We want to learn how to be aware of it, which is what we're taught at the beginning of the book. How do you walk through your life in awareness, not just in the mode of doing, But then you're told, once you're aware that you're in low frequency, you're invited to ask the divine within you, to activate the divine within you and ask, what am I to learn here? What is the purpose of this? And you will have it downloaded. And now I know a lot of people feel, well, Selina's been downloading for years. She knows how to do this. I wouldn't. Everybody has the divine within them. And as soon as you start to activate a relationship with the divine will respond. You have to be patient with that for sure. It's like building a muscle in your arm. I can't decide, or my son just ran a half marathon. He practiced for 2 years in his basement and on the roads before he took on the marathon. So you don't need 2 years, but you need a bit of time of going to the divine. But the point is, when we're in distress, when we're unkind, when we're jealous, when we're coveting, when we're impatient with others, there's something within us that needs to be balanced out. So when you go to the divine and ask that, you will receive that. And then we also ask, Anna, what frequency of love do I need? Because you're out of balance. And when that lands, well, you need more compassion, you need more patience, then you can begin to work with that. So you're totally spot on.
I think to just listening to you, there's just, people talk about, manifesting, but very often it's more about desires being met. And I think the purpose of this is actually to engage with life. We talk about co-creation, and that's exactly what it means. It's engaging with the divine. And it's like a dance where something appears and we dance with it. And then our response brings something else. And it's just this dance that happens, which is about engaging with life and the essence of life. Because when we don't do that, this is where we begin to feel powerless. And this is where we begin to feel that we are victims of life. And it's also where we begin to bring fear and negativity and see darkness in everything, including things that are not necessarily dark. So being able to take this stance of saying, okay, well, that's a heap of lemons I've just been given. What can I do with them? Is a very different approach, which I think is actually very healing on the whole for us when we're dealing with very difficult situations.
Well, when you're talking about the dance, it seems to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you're talking about a dance of energy, of frequency. Exactly. And we are energetic beings, and there's no doubt about it. Medicine science has proven that. We've said EKGs, EEGs, energy flows through us. We are energetic projectors, we are energetic receivers. But we were also given free will when the divine came into our body. Now, I've been told by Source that the breath is actually the physical manifestation of the soul, and I love that. That Spirit breathed through us as infants, and we became alive. When we leave at the end of our life, the last component while that body is on the table is the breath. And so the breath comes in, and we were given life. And Spirit has said, when you were given life, you were also given free will, which is the choice that we all have, that most of us don't even know, and so it's unconscious, but it's still there. The choice to say yes or no to the divine guiding your life. And most people, because we're raised not being told we have an intuitive body, not being told we have this whole bag of wonderful tools within us. You know, if we go to, if anyone talks about spirit at all until the last 15 or 20 years, it was through church and through temples and through religion. And there were very specific ways, and most of the ways where God is outside of you. God is not in you. God is outside of you. And so we weren't introduced to this concept of having these tools, but we're energetic receivers and receivers. And when we are walking through the third dimensional world, there's energy all around us. That's why we use, you know, remotes for TV. That's why we have to sign on to our computer for this interview, right? Because energy is everywhere. We have to pull it down. The brain filters out all the energy around us. And I have direct experience in that, because there was a time when I couldn't walk across the street in New York because I couldn't find an entryway, because my brain wasn't filtering out energy and it was showing up as a wall. So when we go through this dance that you're talking about of energy, we have choice. But if we don't know we have a choice to invoke the divine, we don't invoke it. And so many people are walking around in the world not knowing they have this opportunity that they do. But when we invoke it, then we can direct it. Then we have choice. We can choose how we wish to be in the world. We can engage this intuitive body and respond to difficulty from love.
Beautiful. Thank you. And so this is a good point to remind everyone that the book we are discussing is Raise Your Frequency and Change Your Life. And there it is. I'll be putting a link to it in the description box. And now, you are a teacher. How do people find you?
Well, thank you, Anna. I have a website, practicalspiritualitywithselina.com. I am also on Facebook as Practical Spirituality. There's a whole community there. I also have a personal page, which is under my name, Selina Maitreya, and Practical Spirituality on Instagram as well. People are welcomed to visit the website, Practical Spirituality with Selina. We have a lot of podcasts are placed there. This one will be there as well. And people can listen to lots of information there. I also have a very active blog that is seeded every month with a lot of teachings. And if someone wants to sign up to get even more information that I share every month with my community through newsletters, they can accept the invitation on the homepage of the site at the bottom of the page, and that will get you on my list, which only sends you information about events. We actually have a book group that's starting up in June. I don't know when you'll be posting this, but we do one group a year around the book, and it's a small group that I lead with people from around the world who come on and want to actually work the book with me chapter by chapter. So you can write me an email, selina@selinamaitreya.com, if you're interested in that, which starts up in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah. Thank you. That's wonderful. Thank you so much. I'll be putting links to everything in the description box. Thank you again.
Thank you, Anna, and thank you for all the work you do. Thank you for today's conversation, but thank you for the work that you do to bring people of light together and to share information with them. I so appreciate all the work you do.
Thank you. And thank you all for watching. Until next time, goodbye.